I will be back to my perpetual plant journal. I have
Oh,
two
wow.
beautiful books that I just had not taken the time to look through, and I really needed to know the name of the little stem that that holds the blossom to the sepal.
Yeah.
When there's a cluster for, say, an apple tree or a pear tree.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just could not find it. Actually, I didn't find it in my book either. I finally found it online, but I oh, I just really enjoyed looking. One is Botany for the Artist, which is a beautiful book. And the other
Yeah.
one
Love
is
that
a
one.
Smithsonian Institute. I think it's a Smithsonian Institute book on flowers and
Yeah.
botanicals. Oh
Yeah.
my God, so beautiful.
Is Botany for the Artist, is that Sarah Simlett?
I think so.
She's at Oxford University. She's brilliant. Do you remember I showed you that tree one it's got a it's a big fat book with a red spine. And I showed you that. That's her book of drawings of trees, but very much botanical drawings. But
Yeah.
she's amazing.
Yeah.
Sarah
In
Simlett.
fact, while I'm thinking of it, I'll be right back. I'm going to go
Okay.
and get that.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. And I think that it was seeing your book that inspired me to get it.
Yes. Yes. She's absolutely brilliant. Sarah.
Unbelievable. And I love her drawings.
Yes.
Oh,
Rob and I once went to the National Botanic Garden for Wales, you remember it?
yes.
And next to the shop and the restaurant, there's a little gallery. And one time, just per chance, was her exhibition of her tree drawings. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
They're huge. They're huge. I mean, hours she must spend, but they're accurate, but they also have soul.
I
You know what
think
I
that
mean?
I
The
wonder
drawing.
if they were her drawings that I saw. They were huge and same thing. They looked like almost photographic, and yet they had all of this soul to them.
Yeah.
And they were
Yeah.
graphite or pencil, and they were at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. In
Might
fact,
well
that's
be.
where I might be going on Friday with Nicole.
Hmm.
Um,
Wow.
and I don't know if it was just an exhibition. I just remember that it was in a rotunda of some kind.
Yeah.
They were huge
Magnificent drawings.
and remarkable.
Yeah, I bet it was because
Yeah.
I think she is on her own, really, with the way she works and
Yeah. And
the
very much
quality.
the same style. So it could have
Yeah.
been.
Yeah. Were they trees or were they
These were
flowers and flowers?
trees. These were trees.
Yeah, well, it was probably the same exhibition. Because that she's done the tree book after that one that you've just held up, Botany for Artists. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But she lectures at Oxford University.
Hmm. I wonder if she does any online.
I think she does courses, but I think they might be in person.
Oh,
But magnificent, magnificent.
wow. So this is the other book.
Right,
It is
Smithsonian
Smithsonian,
Flora. Yeah,
and
lovely.
it's just one to die for. I mean
Yeah, yeah, beautiful.
the information. So I'm and in glancing to looking through to find the information I wanted, I thought, oh my good. Oh, and there's mistletoe in the big round balls. Um,
Mm,
there's so much information that now will make more sense to me. Breathtaking.
yeah, yeah. But botanical artist at its best. The other person is that one I keep saying to you about Rory McEwen, who did the leaves. Picked up leaves in New York City, and so the whole painting, which was huge,
Yeah.
was called, New York City, 6th of February, 1998 or whatever it was. His work is stunningly beautiful.
How do you
Rory
spell
McEwen.
McEwen? I know that we talked about it
M
before.
MC capital EWAN McEwen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Again, paintings, you know, how can a giant painting of a leaf seem to have the whole world in it?
Yeah.
When you
Well,
stood, we saw those at the Shirley Sherwood Gallery at Kew Gardens. We went specially to see his exhibition, Rob and I. Um, Again, breathtaking work.
well, I
Just
think the microcosm and the macrocosm are identical in many ways.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's exactly what I was thinking of in the shower today, because I
Of
thought
course you
for
were.
for
What else?
years, absolutely. For years I've wanted to simplify things. And I've always thought, I could just work with, I don't have to draw mugs. I could just draw twigs and
Yeah.
just hold myself to work with just the natural things, whether they be rocks or plants. And the more I thought about it, I thought, yeah, now what can I eliminate if I could still do flexagons, I could still do all the things I like, but have it the core of it be even abstractions, plant or
Mm,
mineral, you know.
mm, mm,
Um, yeah, just
mm.
and forget about the pairs of pears.
Oh, I had forgotten about the pairs of pears. But think of your lichen from last summer.
Well, the lichen is plants.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
But think of all the things you got from that, from these tiny little organisms.
Yes. And oh, I got I got a book on lichen that is like this.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just last week because because I saw it at the Smithsonian, the gem
Hmm.
show,
Hmm.
and it swept me away.
So it was proper book at a proper bookshop, not from
No,
secondhand.
no, I would
Oh,
love to support the Smithsonian.
yeah,
It was like a $45 book, so I'm sorry. And I
yeah.
found it. I wasn't going to buy it, but when I found it online for like
Mm,
$8,
mm,
I bought it secondhand, and it's perfect. Perfect.
right. Good. Good. Lovely.
So
Lovely.
I think that with the making the paints and inks
Mm.
from these, uh, I just I think it will all work nicely, at least keep me happy. Now I don't know if Carol is coming on or not. I think she had some other things she had to do.
And she said she might come for a bit, didn't she?
Yeah, but I'll show you this, and I don't know
Ooh.
if you can see the different tones.
Yeah, I can.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
this is Larkspur ink with soda ash added for
Wow.
one, and then
Wow.
another is with alum added, and it's a little sadder. And then
Mm.
one is mixed. And this one,
Oh,
this was weird.
gorgeous colors.
Um, it's again the larkspur is the green, which usually is the larkspur is usually lavender,
Mm.
but adding the alum or the soda ash turned it this lovely green.
Mm.
And the red
Pale magenta.
that was different mixed berries,
Wow.
which
I
uh,
love those colors.
I do too. But I'm going to dump those jars because they've turned into kind of a gel, which I'm not sure about.
Mm.
And any of the testing, it changes when it dries and it oxidizes like indigo would. It didn't go down on the paper very well at all. This is the Reeves BFK.
Mm.
I will try it on regular watercolor paper. But the reason is that
Mm.
this is straight out of the bottle without any additive. And then this is alum, soda ash, ammonia. I skipped the tartaric acid. This was ferrous sulfate, which is iron, and this is white vinegar. But it was
Wow.
completely different from the original testing of that. So in my test strips in here, all these
Mm.
test strips of things,
Mm.
that's what it was supposed to look like, was kind of one of those, but it
Mm.
didn't look like that at all. I didn't
But
get
they're
any
beautiful
greens.
colors. They're beautiful
They
colors.
are. And I'm happy just putting the drops down and watching them change from pink to green to purple to, just fun. But in terms of keeping these bottles, especially the ones that aren't labeled, unless they're just a beautiful, beautiful brown or a beautiful gray, I'm dumping them because I'm keeping much better notes now. And
Okay.
and some of them smell rather peculiar.
Smell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go off.
Yeah.
So do you now know how to preserve them?
Well, Um, most of these inks, except the very first I made, I did not add gum arabic or borax or vinegar to them. Um, and I realized part of these went down really beautifully,
Mm.
but that's
Mm.
because just today or yesterday too, I added a few drops of gum arabic. Whereas with the berry ones,
Mm.
if I tested it both ways. There are some nice backgrounds, and it had to do with adding just a few drops of gum arabic, and it didn't like go right into the paper and saturate the fibers and do these weird kind of things like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Sort of granulating, really.
Yeah. And you know how hot press will just grab it and it won't move?
Yeah.
So it was doing that if I didn't put any gum arabic in it. So I really learned a lot just yesterday playing with
Mm.
it. And and I kind of want to start fresh because I got hooked on I don't know if it's an apple or a pear in my hedgerow. And I've tried for a long time to identify it today, but all of these colors
Mm.
came
Yeah.
from it. And the most orangey ones and pink ones are
Mm.
from the bark. And the more
Wow.
I cooked it, the more orange it became. And it blows my mind. I know that if I try to lake it, it's going to change color. I will do that to experiment, but I'm thinking that for some of the colors that I'm really enjoying, I have to leave them as ink because in order for it to lake, I have to change the pH. And the pH is what makes most of the violets go green.
So when you lake it, it ends up as a powder.
Yes. It's a
So
particle, so
like
then you can turn it into a paint.
then you can mull them or whatever it's called.
Right, right.
Mm.
But seriously, except traveling, you don't want to have the ink, but you wouldn't know whether these were ink or watercolor.
No, I mean it's a fine distinction, isn't it, between an ink and a watercolor?
Well, I've learned a bit there too. I never really dissected it in my brain before, but it
An ink
definitely is.
hasn't got gum arabic, I guess. An ink hasn't.
Well, but I've been adding gum arabic to the ink, and the ink classes that have been presented in the plant year, the botanic year of plant and color,
Mm.
they add gum arabic. And a lot of the books and tutorials talk about adding a little gum arabic. And the purpose is for the color, for the ink to grab on to the fibers more.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
really in an ink, you don't have alum, you don't have anything that brings the molecules together. Like in a
Mm.
fiber for a fabric, you
Mm.
have to scour it to get the sizing out, to
Yeah.
open up the fibers, and then you
Yeah.
have to mordant it.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And the mordant thing, it's either a tannin or a metal like alum. That molecule attaches itself to the dye molecule. Okay, so now you have the dye attached to this molecule, and
Mm.
that will then grab onto the paper. So it's the alum or the tannin that allows the dye to stick to the paper,
Okay.
fiber,
Yes.
the fabric.
The fabric. Yeah.
So with an ink, you really don't have that. So it just
Mm.
kind of stains it, but it sort of sits on the top.
But if you put an ink on a fabric, you would have it in the same way because you've got it from the mordant and the scouring and the mordant.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
what is the I'm sure you can tell me chemically, and I probably don't need to know, but in my head now I'm thinking, when does a dye become an ink and when does an ink become a watercolor?
Okay, well, a dye, like a dye vat, all right? You make a
Yeah.
dye vat, um, like this. This was the dye vat that I made for the shibori, a part of it. So
So so
I had
that
a
is yeah, go on, sorry.
I had
Yeah.
I made a dye vat of avocado pits from avocado pits and also from the sappanwood. So let's just take the avocado pits,
Right.
or no, let's take the sappanwood because I've done it, all those steps. So the
Mm.
sappanwood, I made a dye bath just by soaking the wood, letting it steep like tea,
Yeah.
and then heating it so that it released more. I
Yeah.
didn't add alum to it. I didn't add anything else. It was just sappanwood and water.
Yeah.
I had mordanted the napkins for the students.
Yeah.
Um, so those napkins got bound up, tied, and
Mm.
put into this sappanwood and water
Mm.
in
Mm.
heat. Okay, so the dye grabbed on to the alum, the metal molecule
Mm.
that was attached to the fabric because that was mordanted. Okay, so that was the dye bath. Then I took the dye bath and added, well, first I just put it on paper, and yes, it did dye it the same way that I was showing you, a little splotchy-ish. But if I added gum arabic, not a whole lot, but just a little gum arabic to the dye bath, then I could put it down in a nice glaze on the paper because the gum arabic, and I don't know what the chemistry part of the gum arabic is. Um, but that, the gum arabic, I'm imagining attached to the dye molecule. And then because of the gum arabic, it was allowed to attach to the paper in a smoother way where it didn't just do its own weird thing. Now, the difference between that and a water, and a pigment is
Mm.
somehow you have to make this liquid into a solid
Solid,
in
right.
order to turn it into gouache, pastel, crayon, watercolor, acrylic,
Even acrylic.
oil, any
Yeah.
of those things. And you just use a different medium to turn it into any of those paints. But you need a particle, which you can get from a stone by grinding it up. And it
Mm.
doesn't really ever dissolve, but with the mulling, you press it in so much that it's again the medium is what's sticking it to the paper, just like the gum arabic stuck it to the paper. The
Mm.
gum arabic is what we use for watercolor. Okay. So we're not adding gum arabic to the ink if
Mm.
turning it into a particle. If we're going to make watercolor out of it, we have to first, um, you can grind up minerals. Okay. That's a whole different thing. But if we're doing it from
Yeah.
plants, it's liquid. So
Yeah.
you have to attach, you have to use a metal, which is acidic, and you have to um, combine that with an alkaline, like washing soda. So first you attach the metal to the dye molecule, to the plant.
Mm. Yeah.
So the yeah, you add the alum into your ink.
Mm.
And then you add, so it becomes very acidic. And usually
Mm.
it will turn more yellow or it will be brighter generally, whatever color is. But there is a color shift when you add the metal.
Mm.
Then you have to bring it to back to a neutral pH of 7, but 6 or 8 can work too. And the only way to do that is to add an alkaline, which is washing soda or soda ash, something like that, calcium carbonate. Um, and that causes a chemical reaction
Mm.
between the metal and the soda ash or, whatever that is. And these are dissolved, of course. And that does this foaming thing, like the volcanoes you made in science class,
Yeah.
and it lakes. If you get it to the right pH, when it's at 6, 7, or 8, you'll start to see this weird thing happening, and it's the molecules attaching themselves, and it becomes an insoluble particle that,
So the fluid, which was originally water,
right.
evaporated or is it chemically
No.
changed?
Okay, so what happens when you're looking at it if all of your measurements and proportions are perfect, which they don't have to be,
Mm.
um, then as the laking happens and it becomes a solid and it goes down in the jar, and I've posted photos of this.
Mm.
If it's just the right amount of alum, the metal,
Mm.
to the dye bath, to the um, molecules of dye, you
Mm.
will have clear liquid on the top and you will have colored substance on the bottom,
Particles.
like like mud, because it's all wet because
Yeah.
it's in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but if it's perfect, it's amazing. It will be perfectly clear. Now, if it's not perfectly clear, then when you filter it, because at that point you put it through a filter and you
Okay.
wash it so that you don't have any metal left to turn into salts and make an impure pigment.
You wash it in water.
Well, okay, so we've got our jar,
Mm.
we pour it through the filter, and if it comes out perfectly clear in the bottom, then you don't really have to wash your pigment. Okay.
Okay.
If it's not clear, then
Mm.
two things are happening. One is you still have a lot of dye molecules left, which means you can use that again. You can lake that again.
Hmm.
Um, it also means because there's still metal, because you're seeing the dye, so that means that there's still metal attached to the dye.
Hmm.
You may have to add more, but you figure that out. Um, and so then you've got this glop that you could let dry and you could think, oh, there's my pigment. But if you don't wash it, then all kinds of really cool, bizarre salt crystals will grow from it as it's drying.
Lovely.
And they are quite beautiful. So what you can do is two things. You can either run clear water and keep filtering it until it gets clear water, or you can take that filter and in a big jar of clear water, dump it and just, that's a quicker way to just take the whole filter and everything, put it
Mm.
in, swoosh it around, and then filter that. And then you get this kind of creamy sort of stuff that
Mm.
you let dry. And when it's
Mm.
cracked and dried, you grind it up, and that's your pigment.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Mm.
So if you want to make it a gouache, if you want it to be more opaque, you would add something like calcium carbonate, which is also alkaline. So you might, instead of just using washing soda, you would use a portion of washing soda and a portion of calcium carbonate.
Okay, so at that stage, at the laking stage, you'd be
The
putting
laking stage. Yeah,
opaqueness in.
right,
Mm.
right. And there are probably, other ways to do it too. You can mix pigments. You could,
Mm.
once you have your powder, I have a lot that I made because I made so many weird batches that I have a lot of pigments that I think are basically just um, pigment that doesn't have any dye attached to it. So it's like it
Mm.
looks pretty white. So I could
Mm.
grind that up and add that into some, you can mix your pigments. So I could mix that in with the sappanwood because I have made sappanwood, all those different colors of pinks. I think I
Mm.
showed you in the little bag.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
did, yeah.
So that was made from sappanwood, which was the same thing as this.
Mm. Mm.
It was the dye bath that I didn't use as a dye bath. I put it through the process of laking.
Mm.
And I mixed different proportions of things that I laked it with, like, different proportions of washing soda and calcium carbonate. So I mean, to me, it's fascinating. I'm glad that I don't ever expect to duplicate anything that I've made. Because, and I learned that lesson really well yesterday when I thought, oh, my idea was that I would take one jar of something, I'd put it into my little flower petal palette,
Mm.
and then have, I'd have one that's straight ink, and then I would have six that have the modifier added to it. So I would have seven different beautiful hues from one ink, but it didn't turn out that way at all.
Mm.
No, because I mean, I did get different things, but I got mainly
Yeah.
subtle differences in grays. And then also the pH of the paper made a difference this time. I never noticed that before, but it definitely did because I used that cheap student watercolor paper to make the book that I did the samples in. And very different from the Reeves BFK. I mean, I want to say a completely different hue, but I wouldn't have said that before I started dyeing because I wouldn't have seen the subtle difference with my eyes. Would have looked pretty much the same to me, but definitely is different. I
So
thought
if you buy
gray was
a
nice.
tube, if you buy a tube of, let's say from Daniel Smith, let's just say for sake of argument, and it'll have a code on it,
Hmm.
P123, whatever.
Yeah. So those are
What's that
spectrograph
referring
numbers.
to?
What?
Hmm? What is that referring to? Those numbers.
That's referring. I could be making this up, but um, it's referring to the spectrograph number. So, like alizarin crimson has a certain, it's really a molecule
Mm. Mm.
that is seen as a certain color, and the spectrographs break down a pigment and let you know what's in it.
Okay.
So P25 can
Yeah.
be in a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And um and I'll be able to give you a better answer very soon because they touched on that in the first class that I took on Monday.
Yeah.
And that's when it's like, oh, okay, because I remembered looking that up one time um when I was teaching myself color again,
Mm,
and
mm,
I started writing down those numbers because they didn't used to have those numbers on the tubes.
mm,
They only
mm.
started doing that, I think, in the late 70s or 80s.
Yeah, I might
Because the
have that.
original old tubes didn't have the numbers.
So,
And I started to notice that, like with the burnt umbers, burnt siennas, and things. And I thought, oh, okay. So I started seeing the crossover,
mm,
and that your warm reds definitely had different numbers than the cool reds, but some of the cool reds and into the magentas and violets would have the same number. There might be three or four numbers,
mm, mm.
but I'll be able to answer that better.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It is.
Mm.
It really
And are
is.
they mainly the commercial colors? Are they mainly from mineral pigments?
They're mainly, I would say, no, those are earth. Well,
I
I
mean, yeah,
I don't know
cornelian,
lapis
yellow
lazuli
oak,
would be, but they're synthetic. So
and they're synthetic. Yeah,
yeah,
I have got a book on, I've got a couple of books about that. Yeah.
yeah,
Because the blues, it was when they found synthetic blues that it made all the difference, didn't it? Because
yeah.
was it Lazu?
Lapis
What?
lazuli was
That's
ultramarine
the one
blue.
was so expensive
Hmm.
because it was from a very rare mineral.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
alizarin crimson was fugitive. And then they came out when they were able to duplicate it synthetically. That's when you started getting permanent alizarin crimson.
But do they ever use plants
Um, I
like
think
you're using?
originally they did. I mean, I know that for a while, I don't know if you can get just straight alizarin crimson now, but there was a time when you could go to the art store and you could get alizarin crimson or you could get permanent alizarin crimson. And the permanent alizarin crimson was totally synthetic, and that's
Mm.
why it didn't fade.
Okay.
But the alizarin crimson still would fade. And
Yeah.
and reds will still, I mean,
Yeah,
reds
reds are
reds are
very
tough.
fugitive, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you can still get um, non-synthetic alizarin crimson. I imagine you can because there's so many companies now that are starting to sell, and they're super expensive, sell natural pigment lines. Cornelison has a whole, I think there are 14 of them.
Yeah,
Um,
they do. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
someone was sharing that in the plant group. Or
Yeah.
were we
And
talking about that?
yeah, we might well have done Cornelius and Son, which
Yes.
is where my mulling thing that I have never used.
Oh, we will use it when I
I
come
know,
time.
I know. Um, but they have, is she called, it's a woman, and I think she's called the London Pigment Company. And her range of pigments that you can buy at Cornelius, they're all ground from rocks and
Yes.
minerals around London. They're
Yeah.
literally, like London red brick type of thing.
I think that she's the one who
Can't remember
teaches
the
the
name.
course in the plant and color.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, yeah, because she was talking about, and she makes and sells them, and she's around London, and I can't
Yes.
remember her name right now,
I
but
can't. No.
yeah, but
The
she has a
colours, every
business.
now and again, they release a new lot, and the colours are so gorgeous. They're all very earthy.
Earthy. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
she gets them from the rocks
From
and
the earth.
yes, from the earth. Yeah. So
Mm.
it is fascinating, and I think, I mean, I just like looking at these.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's something about the yellow green, it kind of glows
Yes, it does.
in
Yeah,
in a way
yeah.
um that maybe like a chartreusey thing would glow in watercolor, but this
Yeah.
it's
Will it fade? Will it fade?
probably. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was doing color tests too, because people will say, well, why do you only use it in your sketchbook? And maybe I showed this to you too, because I had it on the desk, but this is that's in no time. This is pokeberry. This is 2 weeks in the window.
Oh, and that's faded. That's not how you painted it.
No, no. See,
Oh,
I
wow.
use something like this where then I cut it and put
Okay.
up. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
cochineal, which does not fade nearly as much. I think that was up for a whole month, but you can still see a difference.
Now that's animal, isn't it?
Cochineal is bugs, yeah. And here you can see how much it faded. The bottom one is a month.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh,
Mm,
yeah. And here are the fermented berries.
mm, mm,
Yeah, now the berry ink. Okay, so this berry ink was made like a dye bath, whereas this fermented mixed berry ink was not. The fermented ink works better than this stuff that turned to gelatin. But I
mm.
don't know why that is either.
Wow.
Yeah, certainly
Fascinating.
brings up a lot of good questions.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought I would just really focus on the colors that wow me, like the peach or apple, not peach, the pear or apple. Because in the beginning I found, now I know that, now do you call it lichen or lichen? Everyone in the plant group is calling it lichen.
I go between the two
Okay, because
because
it's UK, so they're saying
yeah,
lichen
but mm,
and
I
not.
sometimes say lichen as well.
So
Yeah,
these are lots of different browns.
from lichen.
Well, from different things. This is Swiss chard, but these were some of the first. And it's just, I have so many different browns. And every time I think, oh, well, now what am I going to do with all these browns? I look and I compare them, and there are major differences between them.
Mm, mm,
So maybe I'll just do a painting of a tree trunk and paint it and use up my inks painting it in all different browns.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I never thought I'd be so excited about grays and browns. The different
Mm,
grays that I get from adding the ferrous sulfate to any of these, they're all
mm,
different.
mm,
Like,
mm,
how can there be that many subtle differences in grays?
mm.
I don't know. But I found it very hard. I'll be looking at the landscape and I'll think, wow, that looks kind of like a green gray. So I see it as green gray, but when I try to mix it in watercolor, I can't get that nuance
Mm,
where it's
mm.
really gray, but I do you know what I mean? When
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
you could say a cranberry gray, but when you try to mix it, it just I suppose it's
Well,
because you don't have
you're
the,
limited to the pigments that you've got. I mean,
but you should be
you,
able to mix them in a way that you could come up with it. But with the
mm,
ink, because it's so translucent, it's not a particle. You
mm,
were asking the difference, when does an ink become a paint? But I'm
mm,
thinking from this and the kind of the multiple colors that come through.
mm,
Sometimes you can get it with pigment, but those grays and the browns that I've been trying to get when I do the color mapping,
mm. from paint now.
Mm-hmm. Or
So have you ever
sometimes,
done color mapping from inks?
um, not lately. I mean, I did, but I couldn't really do color mapping because I don't have that much of a selection.
Mm, mm.
So,
I wonder as well, because it's going through my mind with all these colored pencils. Now, that I guess is one of the severe limitations of color pencils because in my head, I can't imagine having the flexibility to get the range of colors that you can from paint pigment. Oh, you've frozen. Have you lost me?
yes.
Oh, you're gone.
Well, you're still there, but you're
Come back.
frozen. There you are. Now
Oh,
you're back.
there we are. There we are. Yeah. How
I
far
think,
did you get?
um,
So I can't imagine being able to get the range of colors with colored pencils, however much you layer them and mix them, that you can with paint pigment.
right. And that's my frustration with them.
Yeah. Yeah. But I wonder if that is just because you haven't got the range, because I haven't got it here, but that roll of pencils that I showed you the other day, that is just a drop in the ocean of that range. They're just the ones I bought. I mean, there's a
Oh,
massive
but can you
range.
imagine
I
having,
know, but I mean, in my color palette, I've actually got it here, but I didn't use it. I've got 42 Tansy Hagen paints now. That's a lot of different pans of pigment, isn't it?
but okay, the difference is you can choose 6 or 8 of those or 4 of them
Yes, and make so much.
and
Yes,
get your values, your tones,
yes,
and then
yes,
just add a drop of something else and get it. But to get that with a colored pencil, you need
yeah,
to lay down a whole layer of something
yeah,
and then a whole layer of something else.
yeah,
And
definitely.
if it's just a subtle thing, how do you lay down a fleck of a color?
Mm, mm.
I mean, physically, like pointillism, well, you're going to see that.
I don't know, but that woman who I sent, I can't remember her name, that does those huge photorealistic
Right.
paintings.
But those are not
Boring.
all translucent, or they're very intense. Like if you have buttery,
Yeah,
there's
they're saturated hues, aren't they? A lot of them.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that that she has colored pencils that are, say, a very pale
Mm.
um butter yellow,
Yeah.
a real
Yeah.
pale thing that will cover up something almost.
Well, layer. Yeah.
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 Whereas with watercolor or ink, you have
Mm.
the light. I mean, that's the beauty of it. You have the light coming through.
Light coming through.
So the
Yes.
white of the paper,
Mm.
this would not look like this if I painted it on black paper.
No, 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 of course.
It's the light.
That's another experiment then with the colored pencils. I mean, it's not my fault I'm using colored pencils at the moment. I
We can
think I
blame
blame
Carol.
Carol, particularly she's not here. Carol,
Yeah.
hi, when you watch this. We wish you were here, but as you're not, we can blame you.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's years since I've used colored pencils, but that maybe is another thing that I haven't tried. Do you remember when you first get a new watercolor, one of the things you do, a la Jane, what's her name in Australia?
Blundell. Blundell or Blundell.
Yeah, you test, you mix, but you also put it down in different saturations and you put it over a dark line so that you can see its opaqueness. Have we done that with our colored pencils?
No, and I'm not going to.
Oh, I think I will.
Okay. I would love it if you did because
No,
then
but it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a different medium. there's something in the head because we don't seem to be worried about just using graphite and producing phenomenal drawings, not mine, yours and Carol's,
Oh,
using graphite, okay, that's somehow acceptable. But then we're getting very picky if there's a pigment in the pencil, i.e., it's a colored pencil as opposed to a graphite pencil.
it's real, even though it's the same shape, it's a totally different animal.
And let me tell you something I found out since Monday. You
Okay.
know, I bought my ink tents when we're talking about
Oh,
what's the difference between
yes.
absolutely diabolical.
Why?
Well, in my little book here, look, there's a little page because I hated it so much. I had to tear it out because I thought, right, I'll do exactly the same process, just take a line for a walk and then color in and do some of it hard so it's thick and buttery and intense and all those things. And I'll do shading, gradation, different tones, and I'll try layering one on top of the other. But I made the mistake of putting water near them.
Oh, I know what happened. Did
Absolutely
did
diabolical.
you
And then I
spill
went
water
back
on
in.
it or did you do
No,
that?
no, no. I wanted to know what would happen if I then turned them into an ink.
Oh,
So, and then I ended up putting more on top to see what would happen. So, I mean, you've heard of mud. Well, yeah. I stopped. I didn't get very far with it because it was horrible. Horrible.
I would have cut it out too, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Because
it was so horrible. I thought I could leave it in there as an example of what not to do, but it offended me so much.
yeah,
I tried it out. I left a little bit that hadn't been coloured in.
that's what happened to me when I first started using the Caran d'Ache, the like the ink tent, same
Wax.
thing. Waxy, where you
They're
dip it in
waxing.
and and it
They're completely different to me. They're not like a pencil crayon.
yeah.
They're more like a wax crayon.
Well,
Caran d'Ache.
the Caran d'Ache that I have, I don't think of them so much as waxy, but
Maybe it's a different
maybe an
one.
oiliness, you can draw on your
Yeah.
face with them. And what I did use them for was I also used them for there's a car that I used to do, drawing like figure drawing that was moving. And
Okay.
it was really great, but I had to do the entire thing in Caran d'Ache. I could not mix it with pencil or pen or anything else. And I had hoped to do that, but anytime I tried for myself, I did not like the results. I
Mm.
couldn't um it just looked like a real mistake. And I don't call things mistakes very much.
No,
But it was
no.
irretrievable.
Yeah, well, that's what this ink tense was. Irretrievable.
Yeah.
Dreadful. Dreadful. Mm. No, I think they deserve more experimentation.
The ink tents, yeah.
No, 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 the pencil crayons, as to whether some are more opaque than others, or are they just all opaque?
Are you talking about the colored pencils that we're talking about that we're mixing that are not the water soluble ones?
Ones that I've been using up until now, that we were talking
Okay.
about the other day.
Because I have Caran d'Ache watercolor pencils, which are different from the
From
Neocolor.
yes, yes, so have
Okay, so
I.
I was talking about the Neocolor are the same as the ink tints.
Yeah, no, I'm I'm talking about the polychromo, Faber-Castell
Yeah,
polychromo.
yeah, the hard ones.
Well, yeah, they're not battery like like Blackwing.
No.
But
Oh,
I need to know now. I need to know whether the limitations, and I completely agree with you. I'm not trying to say that I want to become a colored crayon person and throw out watercolor. Absolutely not. Or paint. But what I'm discovering when I'm working my way through my whole book here, sorry, Hawks, I actually enjoy having a pencil in my hand
yeah.
over having a paintbrush in my hand. You know,
I,
Debbie de Gordon used to say some people are dry medium and some people are wet medium.
I feel pretty at the crossroads there because I too, I love working in pencil.
Mm,
Um, but I also love a brush.
yeah.
It's the colored pencils.
Yes, I know. And this is what, so yeah,
And yet
which
the
is what I
harder
just
ones,
said.
I
Yeah.
enjoyed mixing, what
But
we,
what you were doing on Monday.
yeah, I did enjoy that. I was very, very surprised. And the one I did prior to that
Yeah.
to make sure that I wasn't going to make myself sick when we were doing it together.
This is what is interesting me because I'm absolutely loving using these things. And when I put a brush in my hand to go over these wretched Inktense things, I thought, I'm not sure about this. And I've been watching Colour Play. You'll be really pleased to know. Today, I've been watching you from 10 years ago, Cooking with Chris, or however many years ago it was,
Yeah, I
seven or
don't know. It was a long time
quite
ago.
a few years ago, yeah. Um, and you use your watercolor so wet compared with anything I've ever done. And I've said this to you before, and I think this is a mistake I make when I'm working with watercolor. I think because I got back into painting with Debbie with botanical stuff, which tends to be very little brush, very, careful. Um, and also because I spend all this money on these expensive paints, I don't want so it's the psychology of it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting me at the moment because I'm very happy sitting there with a black wing. And I think I started this black wing thing, didn't I? When we were
Yes.
doing our creative geometry,
Hmm.
I think I was the first one that went from doing what we were originally doing to what I could grossly call shading.
Hmm.
And that got us, and it happened to be a black wing pencil. So we got into that. And then it seems to have blossomed into all sorts of drawings with graphite pencils of various hardnesses. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Anyway, and
I do
then,
have to say that I have fallen in love with the Blackwing matte and the other one. And I
and the
do feel
pearl,
like they
and the
are
pearl.
different.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
are different from my 4B, my 6B,
yeah.
and I
I
like
think they
that.
are different. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 But Carol's made me enjoy using just an ordinary propelling, mechanical pencil with a just an HB lead in,
Yeah.
and using different pressures to get the different tones and things. But now I mean, how many have I done of the colored pencil? One, two, three, four, five. I've done five in my little book.
And they're
Only,
beautiful.
well, I don't know that they're beautiful, Chris, but they're interesting. I mean, look at these colors. This is what I did yesterday and today, but
Nice.
not the subtlety, but this is the similar colors to the ink, the paints you've just been using.
And
Um,
it looks Yeah, you went over the colored pencil with a bit of the graphite, yes?
No,
Not at all.
no. There is graphite on there, and I've posted it, but I've posted it that way up. There's graphite around the edges, and one of the colored pencils, which one? Let's say, mm, this dark blue. Can you see that's dark blue?
You froze.
Are you frozen?
You froze. There. Okay.
Go
There.
back. You see this is dark blue
Yes.
with red on top. That's an indigo crayon
Okay.
with a magenta crayon on top.
All right. So those are, I mean, it's a beautiful blend, but there's no graphite in that area?
No,
Huh.
there's graphite below. That is graphite.
Okay.
And that's a black wing pearl.
Okay. Because
So
it,
all the green that you see is green crayon, and the magenta is magenta crayon, and then there's an indigo crayon.
okay. Oh, I see that that's
Emmet.
green now. At first I thought that was just a gray in the lighting, but I can see it is green.
And then there's graphite in the spaces to sort of act as a background.
I like what these are doing. But you couldn't use Inktense in that.
No, not in the same way, because I do like the texture. You see, that one that I was working on the other day when we were together, now that's Indian red.
I like Indian red. It's like a terracotta almost, but not
Yeah,
quite.
yeah. It's an Indian red. It's a paler blue. It's pale ultramarine, which is bizarre. Um, and another blue that I can't remember. And then it's around the edges. This dark and also this up here is Blackwing graphite.
Okay. Now your Inktense didn't show the texture of the paper the way this does
No,
it? Because
no,
it fill and I
too
think
waxy, too
that's the issue.
waxy.
It fills in the gaps. It fills in the
Yeah,
divots.
yeah, yeah. And that's what I wonder whether the butteriness of the Blackwing would do that as well. Because I think part of the joy of this is that you have got a texture.
Yes, but you use the black. I mean, my black wing, it will fill in if I
No,
press it
no,
really.
no. I mean the coloured Blackwing
Oh, oh,
that
oh.
Cara has.
I think that
The
I think
butteriness, I think it would be, mm, it would cover up more.
yeah.
It's a thicker material, isn't it? I
And
imagine.
I think that that's why Carol likes it because she likes that filled in.
Yeah, yeah,
But it looked to me as if it were very, very solid.
yeah, yeah,
And what I like is the gradual building up of it, showing the grain. I mean, that's what for me is very relaxing. And I like the paper and graphite aspect. And then using the colored pencil in the same way, I enjoyed it, where I wasn't trying to make it like that colored pencil painting image that you sent me that was photorealistic.
yes, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted it to merge with the graphite, and I was happy that I could put that down and then very lightly work the graphite over
over it.
so that there was still an edge if I wanted, but it wasn't an abrupt edge.
Yeah. And you tried putting the color with graphite on top and graphite with color on top.
Yes, I did both.
Yeah.
Very
And did
gently.
and
Just
did you notice a big difference?
um no, if you look carefully, you can see which is on top, but I did it both kind of back and forth. So it was a weaving together.
Okay.
So some was over. some graphite. If this is a graphite area and this is a colored pencil area
Yeah.
in in the I would have graphite over colored pencil and colored pencil over graphite and then the reverse again so that
Okay, so it wasn't. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm sure in this one, I found a difference. In that one, I was mixing blue, magenta, and a dark blue. I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't indigo. And it made a real difference which one you put down first and you put on top.
Well, I imagine, let's say you had an ultramarine blue and you put a lemon yellow on top, that would be really different from a lemon yellow,
With ultramarine on top.
which goes back to what you were saying before about is it possible to create the nuances of color with colored pencil
Mm.
by combining them, or do you need 500 colored pencils?
Yeah.
And mm, because of what we're talking about, I'd say you'd need 500 colored pencils.
Yeah. But that is something I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to get as near as I can to from what I've got, two reds, two blues, and two yellows, you know, um, and see. So if you see, I haven't got in my pencils, I haven't got an alizarin.
Do you have
I've
any cool
got a
red?
magenta. I use
That's fine.
magenta.
Yeah.
Um, and I haven't got an ultramarine. I've got a light ultramarine because that's the classic one, obviously, to get the violets.
Right.
Yeah.
And so light ultramarine, is it,
I know. Sounds peculiar, doesn't it? I just read it on the side. I just picked it up because it was a paler blue.
so does it have white in it?
Yeah, must
Like
have.
a cerulean. Like a cerulean is
No, it's nothing
manganese
like it.
with white
Yeah,
in it.
nothing like a cerulean. Um,
No, not color wise, but in terms of it being lighter. Like,
oh, oh, yes, 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 yeah,
so it just has to have more medium,
yeah.
whatever
So
the
that one,
medium.
that is what they call in this set, they call light
Oh my goodness,
ultramarine.
I thought that was a white. Oh, I
Yeah,
see. Okay. Yeah.
and
But
I
you
think,
build it up and you can get it somewhat darker.
yeah, that's the same one built up
Yeah.
top and then lighter.
Well, you should be able to get violets from that then.
Yes, with magenta, but I think
Yes.
this is
Now the magenta does have a bit more yellow reflecting in it than an alizarin does, but so it's more neutralized than an alizarin.
okay. Yeah,
So you're just going to get a more neutralized, muted violet, but you still definitely can get a violet.
this is magenta.
Yes. And some magentas are almost identical to some alizarins. You know, it depends on the manufacturer. I don't know in
Mm,
terms of colored pencils, but in terms of watercolor
yeah,
pigment.
yeah. So there we go. Yes. So color play.
Color play. Yeah.
Mm, mm,
Yeah. It's fun.
yeah.
It's very fun. So, yes. Uh,
I
that's it.
can't think if I've watched all of the videos that you've posted now because I've watched the cooking and I've watched the I haven't watched the additional ones. Warm and cool.
Yeah, you'll find them in the archives.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's working out pretty well. I, um, I have several things that are ahead of time, but I want to also come back to what I'm doing presently.
Yes,
So I'll go
definitely.
back and forth because it is fun to see some of these old ones.
I know, I couldn't believe you standing there in your white shirt and your apron.
Very fun to do. And that's what made me, I was thinking about that in the shower too. I
Giggle.
mean, I have so much fun doing those things. And
Mm.
I don't mind sharing how ridiculous I can be at times.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's good. It's
And the
good.
truth is I do get up in the middle of the night and draw food.
And what was that? A funny, bumpy fruit that you were drawing? A
Oh,
soul,
uh,
soul,
sop. Oh,
something soul sop or
so source up, or I can't remember. I was surprised too.
oh,
I
a
don't even
sour sop.
sour sop. Sour sop, yeah.
I loved that painting with the green and then the really dark. That was lovely.
Yeah.
That's when I thought you use so much more water than I do. So
Well, and it
gotta use
inspired me
more
to do
water.
more of that again. Because
Yeah,
it was so playful when I would do my
yeah,
kitchen things.
yeah. It was lovely. Yeah, I liked
And
it.
it was just simply playing where I wasn't in the studio trying to be like meaningful about things.
Mm, mm,
It
mm.
was pure fun.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
And my attempt at being humorous, which doesn't work very often, but
I know, I
I look
know.
forward to being in Tuscany, um, and swimming with the Blue Lady. But oh, I want to
Not
go back
the
to
same as swimming in
Chiasso.
the blue sea, though, is it?
No, no, no. But oh, that was just so wonderful.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Better go. Take care.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.